My first impression with Lester Burks was that he was a very calm, unassuming man, had a quiet demeanor, but a twinkle in his eye. And he just looked like, and you felt like, he was a man of high integrity and someone you could trust and a good work ethic and wanted to help people.
He was my first president here at Kingwood College. He and Nellie Thorogood, who was the Dean of Instruction, I think that was her title then, she was kind of second in command, hired me. That would have been in the late summer of 1984. He was a very grandfatherly figure. He was an older man. I think by then, what I mean by older to me is that he was in his late 50s, probably about 10 years younger than I am right now. And he always wore a gray suit, and a suit and a tie, of course. And he very much would put you at ease, but at the same time you kind of felt that he meant business.
What this man did with the warm, kind voice over the phone, my very first experience with him, was he made me feel that I knew him, that he was there for me, that he was very, very happy that I was coming to share this adventure, because we were literally building a city, building a college together for the very first time in this part of this neck of the woods here in the Kingwood-Humble area. And I had indeed come home from Columbus, Ohio, because I graduated from Humble High School, to teach here in my home community for an absolutely charming vice president in Nellie Thorogood and the most amazing man, Lester Burks, as my president, who had changed my life that night. So that's how I remember the very first encounter with him.
Lone Star, that wasn't Lone Star then, it was North Harris, had worked long and hard to be able to build a new campus, and he was our president. And so I was a young new faculty member here. I had taught a couple of other places, but he was absolutely the perfect man to have been selected to be the president. He was calm and reassuring and had done a great job overseeing the building of a new campus.
Lester, first of all, wasn't charismatic. He was very low-key, but I think that was a strength of his, that he wasn't someone who was full of himself in any way. And by the way, the fact that he played a role in World War II, that he was in Europe post-Normandy invasion, I never knew that till I read it in his obituary, till Joan Samuelson passed that along to me. Now, that's the kind of thing he would have known that I would have been interested in as his story, but he never told me that. He wasn't that kind of guy, that he was kind of understated, but I think that was a real character strength.
Lester Burks was a true gentleman. He was an advocate for students, but an advocate for his employees. Now, having been a college president, still in that role, I can understand and appreciate probably more of what he did behind the scenes to get this college up and going. And of course, he was our founding president and served as such for the first 3 years. But he was a man behind the scenes, wasn't flashy, showy, certainly not ostentatious, and just a gentleman. There are a lot of things to do, and especially that first year when we opened. And between Lester Burks and Nellie Thorogood, who was his right-hand woman, she was the dean. We had no vice presidents at that time. Needs were taken care of, whether it was that we needed a copy machine. I think back then we finally got 2 fax machines, and they were strategically placed between our 4 buildings. But Lester Burks certainly took care of any concern that would come up, whether it was facility related, something with our partnerships, classrooms, supporting faculty with new endeavors. So that's what I remember of those early years.
It was probably our second semester here. I was teaching typing because this is right as computers came out. And I had 3 boys come in my class one morning at 8 a.m. trying to get through the door at the same time, and they were cussing a blue streak, and it turned out they were drunk. So I kicked them out of class, was out in the hall really giving them a talking to, and as soon as they walked off, I called Mr. Burks, and literally in probably 2 minutes he was standing by my side to make sure that I was okay, that they were not going to come back and cause any trouble. I will never forget that he was so fast to come upstairs and stand by me.
I had a situation where a student wrote a research paper on Shakespeare's King Lear, and she had been told that everything had to be for the glory of God, and because Shakespeare was not Christian, we were pretty sure he was Catholic, and King Lear was not Christian, but it was actually set in pre-Christian times, that he was not a good writer, and this was not a good play. And I'm sitting here my second year after Lester has hired me, thinking, now what do I do? I explained to her what the problem was, but it was right at the end of the semester. I had no choice. It was, as one of my students said, it's anachronistic. And it didn't fail her in the course, but the paper failed. And this is my first really full-time college job, and I'm thinking, I don't know how this is going to go. She went straight to administration. We didn't have deans at that time. So she went to Lester. I got the call that the student had gone to the president. I'm sick to my stomach with worry. I don't want to fail anybody. It didn't fail her in the course. And a couple days later, Lester called me, and I thought, oh, here it comes. The story ended up being quite charming because he said, I told her she didn't have a leg to stand on. And that's very hard to say today in a litigious society. But he said, I told her she didn't have a leg to stand on. I said, oh, okay. He said, and I can't tell you what we talked about. He said, but then we had a really nice talk. And he was sparkling-eyed at me, and I looked at him thinking, what? And he said, you go, we're done. And it was over. And then years later, I had a student in my class, beautiful young woman, wonderful writer, terrific student. I thoroughly enjoyed having her in my class. Same course. And didn't think anything about it all semester long. She was great, and I enjoyed her. And at the end of the semester, she came to me and she said, I wanted to tell you, and I can't give the name, of course, and wouldn't, that I'm her daughter. She was my student's daughter. And she said, she said her mother told her because of how Lester Burks treated her and how he made her feel. And she was a woman of faith, remember, and he used his faith to talk with her. He made her feel that the college still cared about her. She had to learn from this. It was part of her growth, but she was okay, and that we would always be there. And he made her feel so good and so positive about what had happened, and that the main thing was he had taught her. He was teaching her. He was still a teacher as a president. And she told her daughter, I want you to go to Lone Star College. By then we're Kingwood College. And I want you to take this course, and I want you to take it from Joan Samuelson, because she's the one you want to take. And her daughter and I were both in tears by the time she finished, because it was a monumental moment for her mother and for the daughter. And I found out everything I ever needed to know about Lester Burke was in that. And that's how he was magical.
I think that you could always find him. He was very approachable. Open door policy, always had a kind word. I never saw him ever get upset or be out of character.
And I'll say too that I've been thinking about this because what I'm teaching right now, I'm getting close to the American Revolution and the role that George Washington played. And George Washington, not just as the commander of the fight against the British in the war for independence, but as first president. And you have to be very careful with the first president. It needs to be somebody who's a person of character, because there is a potential for mayhem, and just for again not taking the correct path. And so we're very fortunate. And like George Washington, he wasn't here forever for the rest of his life. He retired after 2 or 3 years. But again, we were so fortunate in that choice because he was a man of solid character, whom we all respected.